Hello everyone, here is Max and I'm at TGU18, which stands for Thomann Gearhead University, and I'm here with Joe Morgan from Joe Morgan Amplification. Yes, hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm enjoying the time here.
Yeah, well, it's been really overwhelming because this place is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the only music store I've ever seen that has a separate xylophone room. An entire room full of xylophones.
Oh yeah, not only xylophones, but there are like everything you can imagine.
Yeah, kettle drums, it's weird. It's like any musical equipment that you could ever think of is in this building someplace.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, yesterday I had a really nice talk with Joe about music, gear, countries, traveling and stuff like that, and I thought, well, I should probably get that on the video, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we talked about is that right now is a great time to be a musician. It's a great time to be a builder because we live at an intersection of history and technology where back in the day, with whether it was Vox or Fender or Marshall or whomever, they weren't trying to build the greatest sounding amplifier that they could. They were just trying to make things louder.
Exactly.
And they were trying to move as many units as they can and make money. So they would, from whatever vendors they could get cheapest, they would buy as many pieces as they could to bring the price down, so they could make more money, so they could build more amplifiers. And just within that, because of the stuff that was available for them to build at the time, they had quality electronics, and they built a lot of really quality pieces, like the tubes that they had access to in the 50s and 60s, even early 70s, right? The stuff that we get today is total utter garbage. It's just absolutely horrible. But we make do and we work around it, and we design for new production tubes and that kind of stuff. So we can make it work. But, back in that day, even when you're scrounging to try to buy the cheapest component that you get, 9 times out of 10, it's way better than most of the stuff that's being manufactured today.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I'm considering the technology level today.
Yeah, technology is one of the things about technology. When we go back to those tubes, is we figured out how to make glass stronger and thinner and stronger and thinner.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So now, like on some EL84s, if they overheat or cool down, have you ever cracked an EL84 and just had like the entire glass just slide right off the new tube? I get videos from my customers occasionally where they'll say, hey, it looks like a lightning storm in the back of my amp.
Yeah.
And they'll send me like this 2-minute video. First off, if your amp is snapping and popping and hissing, turn it off. Don't put your phone on for 2 minutes and take a video and send it to me. I don't need to see it. What's happened is oxygen has gotten into that tube, and through a little microscopic fissure in the glass, and it's now bouncing around in that tube and arcing within that tube. And your amp will blow the fuse, it will shut down eventually. But if you see that happening, just go ahead and shut the amp down and buy some new tubes.
Well, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, don't wait it to explode in front of you.
But it's that technology again, where we're able to make that glass thin and thin and thin to bring down material costs, right? And we're figuring out ways that we can make. We're using technology to figure out ways to make things faster and cheaper. We're not necessarily using that technology to build the best possible pieces that we can, because that's expensive.
Yeah, I remember yesterday you mentioned that back in the days, it was very often that they were not really pursuing a certain kind of sound. They just used the parts that were available, and then the sound just happened.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about designs, right? Each manufacturer had their own design, and that was kind of the way that they made their sound. So they had the element of design, and then they used the parts that were available to them to make that design, make that sound. The difference now is, all right, we have access to all these designs, and we can tweak them a little bit here or there, but we have access to a much wider variety of parts, so good and bad. So like that, again, that intersection of history and technology, I can work with companies that are obsessed with making the best possible component to do that one job within my guitar amp to give the best tone, or I can buy a component that will work within the amplifier from a manufacturer that'll do it as cheap and give me a quote that's 10% of what I'm paying now. So For me, I have to make that design choice to decide how am I going to build the amp. Where back in the day, all they worried about was the actual design, the circuit, and everything else. Now I'm at a spot where, I know I can pick and choose because we have the history component where we know that we've taken a transformer from the best sounding AC30 and we've recreated it, right? And I can buy one of those hand wired for $200, or I can get a Chinese made version for $20.
So which one do you have on your amps?
The more expensive one. Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more about the amps. How many models are there? What do they do?
Okay, I have a bunch of models, right? But predominantly they break down into like 3 categories. Okay. So I have I have an EL84 tattooed on my arm. I love EL84s, right? That
even though it's like more European kind of thing.
It's that. Like, I think the first time I ever heard the Bohemian Rhapsody solo,
oh yeah,
I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do. That's what I want. That's the thing. But just that chime, because you can go from that sound to all that, that early U2 stuff that was, just with all that delay and just that chirp, that chip, and the beginning of the note. It's like such a freaking cool thing. So I make an AC40 and an AC20, and for me, the magic was in the early 60s, those original Vox units had an EF86, and they had a normal channel, and they had a brilliant channel.
Yeah.
They didn't have tone controls, because you don't need them, and they had a cut control that allowed you to take high-end out of the power section. Yeah. And that's
what the present today stands for.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, that's my bread and butter. So I make those amps in 20 and 40 watt versions, heads and combos. And then
is this the amp, for example, if I never ever played Morgan amps before, is this the one I should be trying first?
That's a great question. I think that if you plug into any of mine, it doesn't matter which one you grab first.
Okay.
In fact, when I know I have an artist or a player, especially like at NAMM, when I'm sitting in a sound room and an artist will come in, they'll plug into an amp, and they'll sit down, they'll play, and they never touch the tone controls. They never touch the volume controls. I had Guthrie Trapp in my room for 45 minutes. He never touched the amp once, but he never stopped playing.
Okay.
Right. So it's that kind of, it's when you feel connected to your instrument and the sound that you're receiving, and you don't have to work very hard to, it's really hard to get bad sounds out of my amps.
That's good.
Yeah, so I think if you plug into any of them, you're going to be delightfully surprised. I think that's the only. I had Tosin Abasi, who's a big nu metal in Animals as Leaders, and he was a big digital guy, fractal guy, and he played one of my amps at Seymour Duncan. They have one in their little tryout room that they have at their shop, and Tosin freaked out. He was like, "This feels different." And then he contacted me, came by the shop, and we talked about a bunch of stuff, and he played through some more rigs, and he was like, "You don't know until you know. Until you plug in and play, until you get that connection." He goes, "I can't go back now. I can't do the digital thing. It's like I feel disconnected."
Oh yeah. It feels different for sure.
Yeah, and that's the part for me as a builder. That's the part that just makes my heart fill up. You know what I mean? When you see an artist express themselves and get connected and play music, it's like that's game over for me. That's the reason I do it.
Okay. So what are the other two groups?
Yeah. So the other two groups, I was lucky enough to have a bunch of friends that have a couple of bucks, and one of them bought Graham Nash's small special Dumble for $35,000, and he brought it by my shop.
So it's like extremely rare piece of gear.
Yeah, super rare. 1974 it was built, and he built it specifically for Graham Nash. Had an accordion input on it. It sounded horrible. It was just absolutely horrible. But he wanted me to make a copy of it, and I said, hey, as opposed to making a copy, why don't I Morganize it? Why don't we bring it into the 21st century?
I like that term, Morganize it.
Well, it's like there were things in it, it's cool because it was a really early piece for him, and and being able to see a piece of history like that, and knowing his older work, because I've worked on older Dumbles, but knowing where he would later go in like the 80s with this circuit, I'm like, okay, I can see where he began his thought here, and I know where it would later finish. Yeah. So let's do something different in here. Let's change it around a bit and make it sound good and get rid of the stuff that isn't useful anymore. And Dumble also did amps specifically for artists. So the guitars that they were using, how that they were using them, the cabs that they were using.
Yeah, so it worked in a combination, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever, we couldn't figure that out. We couldn't get a magical combination to make that amp sound good, so we just changed everything. And those are my SWs. So they're like modified Fender circuits, high headroom. I do a 22 and a 50 watt version of that. The 22 will break up a little bit. It has that sweet compression because of the 6v6s, but they're great pedal platforms. The 50 is an amp that's used by, well, everybody from Mike Landau to Kenny Greenberg, Adam Schoenfeld, all these, top session players that need to have something when they go in so they can paint a broad picture with a couple of pedals and a couple of guitars. So it's just it's a workhorse, awesome sounding amp in the Fender camp.
Okay, that's cool. And the third one?
The third one is the RCA35. The RCA35, RCA stands for Robert Charles Amster, who is a doctor guy that bought a lot of amps from me. I never saw him play guitar once. In fact, sometimes when he would come pick up an amp, he would bring somebody along so that they could play the amp. But, he commissioned me to build a 35 watt amp that would work with a variety of different tubes and stuff. I said, yeah, I have something that'll work. So it's a cathode bias Class A amplifier, like an AC30 would be.
Class A, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and when we talk about Class A, that's like that could be a trigger word from some people on the internet.
Yeah.
If you're triggered right now with the term Class A, please turn off the video at this point and seek help. But
don't forget to subscribe first.
Yeah, smash that subscribe button. But Class A basically means that a tube is in full bias all of the time. So, so we have a waveform, right? In a push-pull amplifier, one tube does one half of the waveform, the other tube does the other half of the waveform.
Yeah, that's why it's called push-pull, yeah.
Right. So when we bias an amp, what we do is we want to set that bias range so that when one tube turns off, the other tube is already turned on. Otherwise, if one turns off before the other turns on, you end up with this spot where there's no signal, and we call that crossover distortion. In a Class A amp or cathode bias push-pull, what we're doing is that each tube could handle the full signal. We're biasing on, it never turns itself off. So if you think of it like a car coming up to a stop sign, you're setting the idle in a Class AB amp, but in a Class A amp, you're not even stopping for the stop sign. You're just driving through it at 100 miles an hour. You don't even care about it, right? But the cool part of that is you don't have to rebias. Like an AC30 or my AC20s, you can just pop in another set of EL84s. In the RCA35, you can put 6V6s, EL34s, 6L6s, KT66s, any octal power tube.
And you don't need to rebias?
No, just drop them in.
Yeah, because it's single-ended, so to speak.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds very interesting for me, because I'm the guy who's comparing every single possible options together, so I would be probably up for, going all the way with this amp.
Yeah, and I think with something like that too for studio work, so when you're looking to do something that might have a little bit more of a Marshall feel, throw in EL34s, or hey, I'm playing someplace and I can't have that much volume, throw in some 6V6s, knock the power down to 22 watts. And then that cathode bias Class A has no negative feedback, so it's real immediate with your pick attack. So guys with real strong right hands that, can be subtle and like pick harder or softer, use their volume control, they'll love that amp. That amp it paints a giant spectrum of colors.
Sounds like something for me.
Yeah, right on.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to say?
No, just a pleasure meeting you. I've had a lot of fun here in the last few days, and it's neat to meet enthusiastic people that are just passionate about the craft and the music and tone, and just care about it.
Thank you. Well, it was nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
And I'll be checking one of those amps right now.
Thanks for watching, check Morgan amps online, I'll give you a couple of links in the description below, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon!